And I actually have some little notes that I made 3 quilts in 1 month. I don't have this note written down that I'll never do that again, but I won't ever do that again, I think. And some of the supplies I used for it, how many hours it took me to do the entire quilt. I have some pictures here of when I was creating some of the blocks, and when I was stitching out, hooping some of the designs, stitching some of the applique designs I put into it, and then a quilt to the finished project. The other thing that I also have in here is I took this quilt to our local county fair, and I have a picture of it there, and I took it to the state fair also, and I have a picture of it there. So, and then I also had it displayed at a local museum, and I have the information that it was with and a picture of it at the museum. So this is a good way to catalog your projects. The thing that I don't do quite as much of this now as I used to, mainly because most of the photos that I take now are all digital pictures, and so they're on my computer. I don't actually have the film to put them in a notebook. Of course, I can always print those off, or I can always send the pictures in online and have actual prints of them made. But one thing I'm finding that I'm doing now with most of my digital photos is categorizing them on the computer. I will put, for instance, all my camp photos. I will make a folder called Camp Quilt, and I will put all my photos inside with that, and I'll make just a text document in Word or WordPerfect, or with just a simple text document maker like notebook, and I'll type in a few notes and things that I want to include in that, and I'll stick that in that folder. So anymore now I don't have as much on film as I do on my computer, and of course I always back that up to my external hard drive, but I have a lot of notes that way. And that actually saves me a lot of time too. It's good to journal your quilts and make notes of the dates you made them and what you did, who you gave them to, things like that. But you can also be really creative with this, but it also can take a lot of time. And so I don't want to spend too much time doing this. I want to be sure and record what I've done, but I don't want to spend hours and hours because I'd rather be quilting or doing embroidery. So I have found that doing everything electronically on the computer is a little bit quicker. The other kind of notebook that I have is something that I have for an idea notebook. And this is another just spiral bound 8.5 by 11 notebook. And I actually have some pictures that I think this was in 05. Yes, I have a date here of April of 05 when I went to a Bernina training in Chicago. And they had some projects and some quilts there. And I have a little tote bag up here, and I have a little note that says, I love the decorative stitches on this and the ruffle at the top. So sometimes I will take pictures, sometimes I will have notes. This little quilt here doesn't have notes, but you know, I remember seeing this, and what I remember about this is it has a lot of 3D embroidery in it that I really, really liked. So a picture is worth 1,000 words. In fact, you can probably put a picture up there and remember what you liked about that project more than you can if you just had sketchings and notes. These are some other pictures that I took. And this one I love, the little minky animals they made. This one is just a project with a denim jacket that I thought was really, really neat with lace. So keep an idea notebook where you can sketch out ideas, you can put photos with it, make notes, put dates on it so you remember several years what you were, where you were when you had those ideas. But also keep a journal notebook where you have the things that you've made and you have pictures and you can refer back to that. So keep a notebook where you have things you've made. Keep one that is an idea notebook that you can use several years from now. I actually have another idea notebook, and this one really doesn't have photos. It just has all my notes and sketches. And this one is actually a note from my Quilt Guild, and this was actually 2006. It was August 3rd, and someone showed some bags, and one of them had a machine embroidery cross-stitch design that I thought was really, really pretty. And one thing I put a note on here is try stitching with some metallic threads on a cross-stitch. It really makes a neat window design. So, you know, as people are showing things for show and tell, things like that, I will make notes because it gives me ideas, and that's the very well purpose of it. The other thing I have in here is I did a class on Christmas tree skirts in, I think it was October. Yes, October of 2006. And so I made some little notes of some things that I wanted to do. This one I drew a little drawing, and I made some notes of some designs that I would want to use, and that I could use satin and velvet and do a crazy quilt design, and some different ideas. So I keep this, and I can do all my little sketches and things on it. And I will probably have so many more notebooks, and I'll never ever be able to get all the projects done or ideas that I have. But I do have those for reference later on. The thing I would really importantly stress that you do is write dates. That's really helpful to think about. You know, in 2005, what was I thinking about this time that I would want to create with that project? So that really helps. Keep a notebook of ideas. What I used to do is keep little pieces of paper with ideas, but soon I began to lose those pieces of paper, or I'd have to file through so many to find what I was looking for. It was really hard. So I switched to just inexpensive college school notebooks, and they really work really, really well. Of course, you can decorate them, and you could get all kinds of other fancy notebooks also, but these college school notebooks will work really, really well. So that's how I do a lot of my journaling, and where I keep all my notebooks. Their permanent home is here, but like I said, my clipboards kind of go all over, and my notebooks get pulled out and put back in. But I've really found that notebooks are a great way to keep track of the projects you've done and the ideas and photos you have of projects that you want to create in the future. One of the other things this bookcase has in it, as well as my notebooks up on this shelf, is I keep a lot of instruction quilting books in here, and I also store all of my magazines that I get every month, which is way too many. But they always have lots of good ideas in them, and I always refer back to them later. So I usually sort them by the type of magazine. These are my Sew News ones right here. They are, at the moment, sorted by date that I received them. They usually get mixed up, so they don't stay that way. Then this is my Creative Machine Embroidery and Designs in Machine Embroidery, Creative Expressions magazine, and I have some quilting and miscellaneous magazines that I've collected over the years here. Up at the top, I have different kinds of books, some quilting books, some by Alex Anderson. I have some Jenny Haskin books here. You'll recognize, like some Roses for Mary, some books like that I want to be sure and keep. I also have books here that are instruction books on my machine and my computer software, so they're really handy when I want to get to them. I use tabs a lot to tab my books, and they're just little post-it notes that you can tab on there. I can write on there and refer back to something that I know I want to look at. I make notes in a lot of these books because it's really helpful for me later on. I have pattern books here, and so I try to keep my most used books that I have here. I have to say my collection of books is not probably quite as big as a lot of others. I do a lot of my research on the internet, and I get a lot of information on the internet, and I have a lot of information stored on my computer versus actually in printed book form. So my book collection is not quite as great as maybe some others, but it has some of the information I need. And I always like to refer back to my magazines. There's so many good ideas in there, and you can never stitch out everything. But sometimes just one little embroidery tip idea or one little quilting project will be just what I need to finish some kind of project. So these are all the ones that I've read and finished. I have another pile of magazines clear at the top of this bookcase, which is in my to read pile. And once I get those read, I'll file them down under here. So that's the way I do my journaling and notebooks and store them here, and then I store my books and magazines here.